Hello, and welcome to another episode of Balanced Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Bitten Jonsson is a registered nurse and a US trained expert on food addiction. She specializes in helping people to break free of unhealthy attachments to food, such as sugar and processed carbohydrates. She has been on the board of directors for the Food Addiction Institute located in Florida since 2010. Bitten has decades of experience treating patients with food addiction and has developed a holistic treatment program for food addicts, in which she offers educations for professionals both in Sweden and online. She has developed a self diagnosis test, which helps clients learn if they are suffering from harmful use or addiction, since it is so important to know the difference because the treatment for each condition differs. Bitten follows guidelines for addiction from the American Society of Addiction Medicine and is trained in addiction interactive disorder, oftentimes described as one illness, many outlets. Bitten herself is a food addict in recovery since 1993, which is when she got help after struggling with her own food addiction for many years. She is convinced her program can help those who are addicted to sugar, including myself. Bitten Jonsson, what an absolute honor it is to welcome you to Balanced Body Radio.
Thank Casey. It's an honor to be here. I love it.
It is such an honor to host you. You might be one of the top people that's mentioned on this show that's never actually been on the show until today. So it is absolutely such an honor to host you. As I mentioned in the introduction, you are a former food addict, and so am I. It was a really harsh realization to come to that I was addicted to sugar. At one point, a few episodes ago, I made this point to somebody who was also an expert in food addiction and sugar addiction. And I said, if you told me that cigarettes were addictive, that wouldn't really be a problem. I'm not a smoker. It's kind of, not really in vogue in the society. So it's not really a risk for me. It's kind of expensive and it doesn't really sound good. If you told me that cocaine or heroin or crack was addictive, that's probably okay too, because I don't really know where to find it. I don't know who to find that can sell me that stuff. But if you told me that sugar was addictive, we have a massive problem because I can find it everywhere. Gas stations, hardware stores, the kids in the neighborhood selling it. It is everywhere. We have a huge problem if sugar is addictive.
It's the biggest problem today in society.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's not only that it is, it's everywhere. One of the problems is too that it is such early exposure in our lives, as babies, toddlers, kids, before our brain is developed, and it really affects both our body and our brain.
Yeah, it really, really does. There's a Michael Pollan quote, excuse me, where he says he describes basically the first time that his child tasted sugar, and it looked like this kid had a revelation. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. I live in a world where this exists. How can I find more? That's how we respond.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And when I grew up, there were some candy and ice cream, of course, and stuff like that, but very little. So I grew up on real food that my mom cooked. But today, the food, the mixture in the food is so much more dangerous. Like if you take an ice cream today and you go to a lab with it and look what's in it, and an ice cream that I got, in the 50s, it's totally different ball games. So the one you find today is much more addictive than it was before.
Wow.
That's scary to me.
Yeah, that's very scary. You have such an interesting story, and you mentioned, growing up on at least real food. But can you describe what it was like to grow up and discover your own sugar addiction?
Well, I didn't understand it, of course, for many, many years, but I knew I loved chocolate. Chocolate and ice cream were my favorites. I wasn't too much into bread and pasta and all that. I know some people are. I'm lucky I'm not, because that is worse, actually, because it totally rips your stomach apart. But, I loved the few times that I got chocolate and ice cream. I kept thinking, when I grow up and have my own money, I'm not going to eat regular food. I'm going to only eat chocolate and ice cream. That's how much I loved it. But, it wasn't accessible. So, but when I was a teenager and I got my own money and I worked extra from school, I could buy more, of course. So I started to gain weight. And, that is something that girls and women go nuts over. So it wasn't until I was in nursing school when I was 19 that we started dieting. And I can look back and see now it was the dieting that really made it take off, because once you start denying your body, so you starve yourself. We had crazy diets at that time, eat nothing and then eat chicken or something. It was stupid. But anyway, we didn't know anything about nutrition. That's why. So anyway, when you start dieting, that's when you start gaining weight. Because when you push down and deny yourself certain foods that you're addicted to, and then you take one bite and think you're going to control it, you can't. That is addiction. You lose control. And then you're going to overeat again. And then you think, and you can't stop right away because the drug has such a horrible hold over your brain. So of course you think, well, I stop in a week and it's going to be 2 weeks or 5 weeks and you gain a lot of weight. And then you go on a diet spree again and try to deny yourself a lot of food and exercise like crazy and, try to eat healthy or less or whatever. And then you take one bite again because you don't understand that the chocolate and ice cream and the breads and the pastas, they are a psychoactive drug. So we have a saying, 1 is too much and 1,000 is never enough. So you're starting to go on the roller coaster, and each time you go back to the drug and you eat for a while, it has a stronger hold over your brain. So it's harder to stop and you gain more weight. And then you push even harder. So, you try every goddamn diet. And this is what happened to me. But when I was 19 and I was doing this on and off thing, I started smoking because, the big girls told me that that's a way to suppress appetite. So, and then I was hooked on nicotine right away. I mean, it was like one day. And then, of course, in nursing school, partying, we started drinking. And then I was hooked on alcohol. So during these years, with the sugar, the nicotine, and the alcohol, I didn't really understand the power of sugar. But sugar is a gateway drug. So it was because of the sugar I became addicted to nicotine and alcohol so quickly. So then at 33, my American husband thought that I was drinking too much. So he forced me to go to treatment, which I will be forever grateful to him to do that. Wow. And that's when I started gaining knowledge. So I was 33 at that time, 1985. So I loved the science and everything I learned. So I fell in love with addiction medicine and neuroscience, and has been ever since. So the rest is sort of history. But I was sober for 7 years in recovery, but I kept smoking and drinking coffee and all that because I didn't understand that they were connected. And then I wanted to be even healthier. So of course I quit smoking and cut down on coffee. And then I heard this guy that I trained with, Terence Gorski, say that if you're an alcoholic or drug addict and you keep drinking lots of coffee and you eat junk food and you smoke, there is a higher prevalence to relapse into the alcohol or drugs. And I thought, I don't want that. So that's why I quit smoking and, wow, cutting down on coffee. And I thought to myself, thank God I don't eat junk food, because to me, the only thing that I saw as junk food was McDonald's, not chocolate and ice cream. So I kept eating chocolate and ice cream. And of course, taking away the nicotine, if you're addicted to several things and you take away one, the others get worse. That's how addiction works. That's how the illness in your brain works, no matter how you try to control it. But anyway, so of course, then my sugar addiction took off. And that's how I found out finally, thank God, what sugar addiction was all about. And I prefer to say sugar addiction instead of food addiction, because I like to talk about psychoactive substances, which is sugar sweeteners, all the flours you can think of, processed and ultra processed foods. And then, of course, we sugar addicts, we also have, I'm not addicted to a piece of meat. I'm not addicted to fat. I'm not addicted to salt in its pure forms, but it is the combination of things and processed food. That's what triggers the whole thing. But we have to remember too that once you're sugar addicted and you start this dieting, starving, binging, overeating, they turn into addictions themselves. So they are process addictions. They are process addictions like gambling or, stuff like that. that develop because you try to control the substance. In this case, the different types of sugar, carbs, whatever you want to call it. So that's why we end up having such crazy eating behaviors. And that's why some people say, well, I could overeat anything. Yeah, but that's because you have been an overeater, a volume addict, because you were sugar addicted. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very important. So it's all the same thing. And in order to, you have to treat the holistic view, you have to treat, the whole addiction, all the outlets. And many of us turn to alcohol too when we have done sugar on off so much that it doesn't affect us that much anymore. You don't get a zing anymore. And then you try something more heavy. You start drinking or, pills or whatever, what have you.
Yeah.
That's addiction. Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. As part of preparation for this interview, I went back to listen to one of my very favorite books. I've listened to this several times, The Case Against Sugar by Gary Taubes. And
Yes.
he mentions in that book, he outlines smoking, something that you mentioned. A cigarette is different than tobacco and nicotine and things we used to smoke in the past. The thing that makes a cigarette is they take the nicotine, or the tobacco, excuse me, they soak it in sugar. That's what allows you to take in more of the addictive substances into your
Yes.
body. And that's how they addicted us to smoking.
And it goes up to your brain faster.
Crazy.
That's why it goes way, way faster up to your brain. And we know from all the studies in neuroscience and addiction medicine that the faster something works, the quicker you become addicted to it. And here's one thing that people don't understand, that bread is addictive, because when you chew it together with the enzyme amylase in your saliva, it turns into sugar and it goes straight out in your blood. And people say, oh, bread is not sugar. Yes, it is sugar. Flour is sugar. Hey, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pasta is
Keep bread
sugar.
in your mouth. It is,
Yep.
absolutely. If you keep bread in your mouth long enough, it will taste sweet. If you just chew
Oh,
it and get it down,
absolutely.
it won't taste
Yeah.
as sweet.
Yeah. Chew it
Wow.
20 times. You're going to see something interesting happening.
Yep.
Yep.
Wow, that's so crazy. So the first chapter of his book is called Sugar. Is it a food or is it a drug? And it sounds like we need to be thinking about sugar much more like a drug than we need to think of it as food.
Absolutely. In my world, it is a psychoactive substance. That's what we talk about in neuroscience, addiction medicine. Alcohol is a psychoactive substance. Nicotine is heroin, cocaine, cannabis, blah, 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 blah. So, you have to understand that a psychoactive substance will hijack your brain. You're not in charge anymore. If you have a genetic sensitivity to become addicted, which not everybody does, everybody that drinks alcohol doesn't become an alcoholic. I did, because I have that genetic sensitivity. And some people have it and some don't. Some have it extremely sensitive. They become addicted real quick. For others, it takes a while to develop it. But, it is a biochemical problem in your brain. That's it. It's not bad
that's
character.
so interesting. Oh, it is truly addictive.
Yes, absolutely. Incredible addictive. One of the most addictive psychoactive substances we have.
Wow. Is that the reason why we get addicted to that versus things you mentioned earlier, like the protein, the salt, meat? Somebody might look at my social media and think that I'm addicted to steak and eggs since I've been on the carnivore diet for over 4 years. I'm just like freebasing eggs cooked in butter all the time. What is it? What is it about the meat and the eggs and the salt that has it's got a like self-regulation to it? Like I get so satisfied on those foods, I cannot eat another bite once I reach a certain level. Sugar never does that. The more I get, the better it tastes. What is the difference between those foods?
Well, the natural foods, it is normal to be hungry, right? Craving is not normal. The obsession and craving is not normal. To be hungry and to eat natural food that we are biologically made to eat: meat, salt, butter, eggs, whatever you mentioned, fish, the protein and the fat and maybe some veggies. for some, but the thing with those, because you eat them clean, they are not made into a product with several ingredients. So that fat and that protein are natural to our body. So if you don't eat anything that triggers your dopamine in that way, you're going to get a normal dopamine release only because your body is satisfied. You have satiety. So it's normal to be hungry and wanting food. And when you eat, we get a little poof of dopamine, because it's going to tell you it's good that you eat, Casey, because otherwise you're going to die. But let's say that the dopamine surge in your reward center at that time is maybe 100. Okay, I'm just faking a number. But if you take a drug, it can go up to 1,000. You see the discrepancy?
Yeah.
So, that's called sensitivity. So, once that happens, and if you are one person that would react to that, not everybody does. They can eat a little bit of sugar and nothing happen. Lucky guys. But who would want to eat a little bit? That's so boring.
Not me.
Not me. But anyway, so then, if you get that surge early, that's what you've seen. There is a video on a kid that tastes ice cream on YouTube and go by, whoo, everything lights up. So that's what's happening. It lights up, and another kid would have a lick and then, yeah, it's not too good. I don't want any more. Actually, I used to say we can divide people in 3 groups. You have the social users, or what we jokingly call the normies. People that, they don't react to that. They are like, steady state, hoo-hoo. And then we have the harmful users. They usually eat for feelings, because of feelings or stress or culture or party. They have a reason why they do it, because they grew up in that way. They don't know anything else, but they're not addicts. And then the third group is the addicts. So that's why it's very important. If you're a professional and you're going to help people, you have to understand, whom am I dealing with? Oh my God, this is a normie. Do nothing. Bye-bye. Have fun. If it is a harmful user, you have to look at why they eat. You have to ask them, why do you do this? Shall we look at your stress, your emotions, your thoughts, your party, your culture, whatever we need to look at, your knowledge, blah, blah, blah. If you have an addict, you don't ask why, because there is no why. It's a primary illness caused by the drug. So they don't eat for a reason. You see what I mean? They're already hooked.
Yeah.
So you should ask them, how can I help you? There is no why. Forget the why. And this is very important to not, a lot of people that are stuck in sugar and food and eating like crazy and, all this turmoil, they think they eat because they are depressed. That's baloney. They are depressed because what they eat. You see the difference? We have to learn to put the horse in front of the wagon. Somebody have a happy childhood can become a sugar addict. Somebody that have a miserable childhood can become a sugar addict. It's just more complicated. It's the same illness, primary illness, no reason why they became more than the drug. But the one with the unhappy childhood, of course, needs more help in the long run to recover. The other one can bounce back faster, but it's not like an unhappy childhood or trauma causes addiction. That's a myth. Addiction is caused by the drug.
Yeah, that is such a great point. I want to come back to that point. I definitely want to come back to the dopamine. I do want to point out, this is interesting. We're both at a time of year in the Northern Hemisphere where it's finally springtime. It sounds like both you in Sweden and I here in Utah have had very harsh and long and terrible winters, but it's springtime and things are growing, things are blossoming. And as part of that, I have a very small strawberry bush outside of my house in the backyard. And it makes delicious strawberries. In fact, yesterday was the very first day that I picked my first strawberries off of this bush. Yeah, delicious. They are about as big as the tip of my thumb. They're tiny, tiny, tiny. They're very, very sweet, but they will only yield fruit for maybe like 5 days, 6 days, like maybe a week, and that's it. I picked 4 strawberries off of that plant. Again, all very, very small. Two of
Yep.
them I left out on the countertop. They are now like rotting. You can tell how oxidized they are, even after just like
Yep.
12 hours. They're already
Yep.
going bad. So part of all of the problem of this is the supply of carbohydrates. We learned how to refine and make very inexpensive sugar distributed all over the world to everybody, where we have evolved. Like if you go on your lovely walk, which you described to me off air, this sounds absolutely amazing, for 2 hours, you're probably not finding an endless supply of carbohydrates all over the place all the time, especially if it's not a very special time of the year when some of these plants are growing. You don't get fruits and carbohydrates in the wintertime.
No, yeah. We didn't do that before, because then we had maybe some wild raspberries. Like you say, they were very small, very sweet, very satisfying. And, we don't mix them into anything. You have a handful of your raspberries as a dessert, or blueberries. And, that's what you can find in end of July, beginning of August, and then that's over. And of course, we have apples and stuff like that. As a sugar addict, I don't eat fruit because it is too much sugar for me. So if I eat something, it's a tiny amount of berries. I could eat that, like raspberries, preferably, or blueberries. But other than that, I eat meat, all kinds of meat, and lots of great fat, and then some veggies. And usually the starchy veggies is, of course, what we can keep in the winter, like the potatoes and the carrots and all that. And I don't eat that because it's too much carbs for my body, for my biochemistry. But I can have some green, like broccoli, or frozen broccoli, or cauliflower, green beans, haricot vert. I can have that type of veggies with my meal. And the balance between the protein and the fat and the veggies is, of course, most fat and then protein and then veggies.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
balance is everything. And I think maybe if I never had the processed food, maybe I could have more berries or not be so sensitive. But nobody will know that, because this happened, ages ago. So we don't know that. But, I know today where my limits are.
Yeah, no, that's super important. And knowing that your body will give you, again, like the regulation for when you've had enough salt, when you've had enough meat and protein.
Yeah.
Like we went to a Brazilian steakhouse a few weeks ago and had all you can eat meat. And I literally had a piece of delicious ribeye in my mouth that I couldn't bring myself to chew it. You're so satiated. I could not. It's the weirdest thing. I knew I'd be mad at myself the next day for not eating it, but it's like you get to this point of satiation where your body will not let you do that. Where with sugar,
Exactly.
there's no limitation.
No. And even if you get really sick on eating tremendous amount of sugar when you binge, you wait an hour and then you can go at it again. You can't
Yeah.
do that with the way you and I eat. No.
Oh, it's crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
so you already explained dopamine, which was a fantastic explanation. I want to reiterate that. I read a book a few years ago and it got so depressed that I only read the first 3 chapters. So I need to go back and read it again. But I believe the title was Dopamine Nation. And it talked about how we are so overstimulated with dopamine, whether it's, like you said, gambling, sugar, opening my phone. Do I have notifications? Who commented on my Twitter tweet? You know what I mean? Like there's so much stimulation that our body does something called down regulation. Can you talk a little bit about dopamine and how our body down regulates it?
Yeah, absolutely. I know exactly which book you mean. And I've studied dopamine since 1985 when I was in treatment. I learned about the dopamine research already at that time. First of all, I like to point out that dopamine is the conductor in the symphony of neurotransmitters. So it's not all about dopamine. It's just the initiator. And then you have endorphins, you have adrenaline, you have noradrenaline, you have GABA, you have acetylcholine, you have other neurotransmitters that are affected by this dopamine, ripple in your brain. Think about it as a pendulum. Dopamine senses, should it be gas or brake, gas pedal or brake. So then it sends, the ripple through the brain to all those different, if it is a downer or an upper. So let's stick with that for a while. So you have to understand that, it's more than dopamine affected in your brain. Then something happens that it's not talked about a lot today. The way I was trained and taught this, which I think is very important to understand, is it's going to be an upregulation. Your body is so smart and it strives for homeostasis all the time to keep in balance. You do a lot of stupid things and your body is there. Oh my God, now he's doing this. Oh, now he's doing this. We have to counteract, blood pressure, pulse, heartbeat, everything. Your body is always trying to balance. That's what homeostasis is. Beautiful. You are a magic thing, every cell in you are magic. So anyway, what's going to happen is that when you start taking a psychoactive substance and you have this genetic sensitivity, maybe small or big, or you are in a culture where you're flooded with the drug, or maybe just a little, that combination is hard to see. Is it 30% or 70, or we can never know that. But anyway, so then when you start taking something and your dopamine gonna kickstart that pendulum, up and down, and you get the kick and the high and the down and the relaxation and all that, what's going to happen is that your brain going to say, oh my goodness, we don't have enough receptors for all this neurotransmitter flooding that is caused here. So we're going to make more receptors. That is upregulation, okay? Because the brain is smart. It has to counteract this stuff. And then you keep taking the drug. And the way it works is that every time you have a release of neurotransmitter, some die, they are, breaks down. That's the way we work. They breaks down and you have to make new ones. People that are doing drugs, sugar is one, they don't live very healthy. And you need to eat a lot of protein in order to make new dopamine. You have to have a good microbiome, your normal flora. So of course you don't have that. So it's going to come a day when you keep eating sugar and and suddenly your brain going to say, oh my goodness, now I have too much receptors, which causes a horrible craving, and not enough dopamine and endorphins and GABA and all that. So wait a minute, we need to block some off. Okay, so now that's the down regulation. It has to block them off. How do you feel when that happens? Well, you're depressed, you have mood swings, you're irritated, you have what we call volatile blood sugar. Now your body cannot keep up the homeostasis anymore. You probably have insulin resistance. We could spend 4 hours just talking consequences from this on all levels in the body: physical, psychological, social, spiritual. You start losing yourself. We call it short, foggy brain. That's a miserable feeling. You are tired and wired. That's horrible. Okay. I used to say it's like having a Ferrari in the garage. You push on the gas pedal in the bottom, but you screw down to the floor. Ooh. Or you feel miserable, and you're going to get disrupted sleep and disrupted stomach and all kinds of problems. And basically, you're going to lose all your energy. So, everything is like climbing up Mount Everest, no oxygen, 40 kilos of packing, no help, no Sherpa. So now you're in bad shape, right? But here is also the difficult thing where you are more into drug-seeking behavior. You want something that's going to fix this problem, with having foggy brain and being miserable. But you have this horrible craving, because the more the effect goes down, the higher the craving go. See what I mean? So now you are on this weird thing, eating, although you get sick from it, but you can't stop. And not everybody get overweight, but many get very overweight, and you still can't stop. And that horrible feeling inside of you, knowing that you're doing this to yourself, but you are driven by this crazy biochemistry that is totally out of whack in your brain. and you keep doing these things, and that's a horrible feeling. You try to find reasons, excuses, solutions, but unless you really know about your addiction and learn about the biochemistry in the brain, you cannot fix this problem. You need professional help to understand what addiction is all about, how your whole brain has been upregulated, downregulated, all the consequences, so we can start working on healing you. And I always say to my clients, it takes about 18 to 24 months for your brain to heal. And you should not do any therapy during that part. You should only learn to live one day at a time, with routines, and be rigorous, but not rigid, because perfectionism is going to throw you right back into the dieting again. So this is what a lot of people don't understand, that it takes a long time to rewire your brain, because your brain has faulty wiring. I used to say that it's like the most beautiful castle in the world. All the electricity, all the cords are drawn, but there is no cream in them. You see what I mean? It's only cream in your reward center and your reptilian brain. That's drug. That's all that matters, And you are terrified giving up the drug because you think, I'm going to die. I can't live without this. But, so you have to take away the drug, and you have to rebuild your brain in order to rebuild your body, and start creating new neurons, new connections, and you have to rewire your brain. And that's a tough thing. So, some people are like, I can't do it. I'm not going to even start because I can't handle it. So, I wish there were treatment centers that could work according to this model, where people could stay 6 to 8 weeks and be pampered and fed good food. So, all these negative effects going to drain away, and they're going to start getting their energy and their joy and vivacious life back, and then go out and do it. But think about it. You have to do this all by yourself. Maybe you can afford some support once a week and go to a support group. And people are going to tell you you're crazy. You could eat in moderation, which is a white unicorn. Hoo-hoo. But you see what I mean? You have kids, you work, you might not have a lot of money to spend on this. Talk about uphill.
Wow.
And this is what hurts me so much, to see so many people needing this, wanting this, but it is such a hurdle to get over. So, all the strength to all of you that fights out there, but please seek support. Join a support group that can, help you, and stay away from coaches that tell you to have a beach 23 vision this summer, or think about 3 months down the road you could lose the weight. I tell you what, it's all about 24 hours. It's only one day at a time. That's all you can handle and do. And if you can really stop your mind from thinking about 2 days from now, and think, I shall only do this for today, and I'm going to seek support. And only for today, seek support. For today, seek support. Then you have a chance to fix this.
Yeah. Wow. That was such a wonderful explanation. I love that. For people out there who are listening and feeling a little bit pessimistic, don't worry. We're going to get to more of the optimistic stuff here in a little bit. You mentioned all the different effects that sugar can have on all different types of systems in our body, and our emotions, and our mental state, and all that stuff. And you're right, we could spend 4 hours talking about that, but I would love to just revisit that and talk about how sugar affects insulin in the body, and also how a similar mechanism to dopamine happens, where if we're consuming a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, we're going to have different regulation on insulin and how that affects our body. Can you explain a little bit about what's happening with insulin resistance?
Okay, insulin is a growth hormone, right? Insulin's role is to open receptors on your cells to let glucose in, so that you have gasoline in the car, i.e. fuel in the cell for energy, okay? And remember one thing, you don't have to eat one molecule of sugar, because your body can make sugar from protein and fat. So that's how we are made, actually. So we don't have to add any sugar. The problem is, our pancreas are created to make some amount of insulin every day. When you eat, actually insulin can start increasing when you look at food. If you obsess about thinking about food, insulin gonna raise.
That's
And
right.
as soon as insulin raises, your blood sugar goes down, because now comes more fuel, right? Blood sugar, so it goes down. Well, if you eat too much carb, which everybody that doesn't have the knowledge you and I have, and eat meat and fat, basically, which doesn't release a lot of insulin at all. But if you eat carbs, any carb, even a tomato is a carb, but there are good ones and bad ones. But of course, the sugar and the flour are the worst in the processed food. If you eat that, your pancreas has to work overtime like crazy and produce insulin and push it out there, because the body knows that it's very dangerous to have a high blood pressure, high blood sugar level in your cells, because that's what's hurting your cells. Your lining of your blood vessels, the endothelial lining, will be very damaged by sugar. And then when that happens, when you eat too much, then the brain say to the liver, oh my God, we have a lot of cracks in our blood vessels due to the sugar. So now you have to produce cholesterol, which is a repairing thing, packing in our cells. It's not a dangerous fat. That's the sickest myth ever. So now, of course, due to all those cracks in the endothelial lining in your blood vessels, the cholesterol has to go out and repair it, smooths these, so you don't get a stroke and all that kind of crazy, dangerous inflammation and heart attack and stroke in your brain and God knows what. Okay, so now, your blood vessel going to become thicker, because if you don't stop now and start eating food that doesn't release a lot of insulin, you keep eating, pushing insulin, it's going to get worse and worse. And the arteries will be now swollen tighter. So now your blood pressure going to stick up. Because think about it as a hose in your garden. If you tighten that on the inside, you have to push the water harder to get some water out, right? That's what high blood pressure is all about. But of course, you get a pill instead with a lot of side effects. And since nobody tells you how you should eat, you keep eating the same crazy way. So now you need pill number 2 or number 3 or maybe 4 pills for your high blood pressure with very, very dangerous side effects. And nobody's teaching you lifestyle medicine that you can change this. And then the high insulin level will affect your brain. It will affect your kidneys. So they don't have the flow of salt as they should. So now you start having edema. And, when I meet people, I said, can I touch your arm? Of course, I don't go up to people on the street and do this. No. If they come and ask me about health and insulin and all that, it's like, may I touch you? And, I take their arm and I pinch like this. You see, I can lift my skin. Yeah, you can lift your skin. But if you have insulin edema, it's, you can't lift it. It's hard. It's stuffed. So you have a lot of fluid and, in your cells, in your body, you're swollen. And that's why too, when people go into low carb keto, they lose quite a lot of weight, right away. That's fluid because they cut down on insulin. But anyway, if this goes on and on, you get something called insulin resistance. That is when the cell can no longer answer to the insulin. It doesn't open the door for insulin to put energy in. So now the sugar in your vessels would start racing, and that's very dangerous. That's very toxic to the cells, and you get this effect all over. So you can actually, now you have become insulin resistant. So the fat in the cell, sugar gets turned into fat in your cell. It doesn't leave the cell, so you have no metabolism. You don't lose weight, even if you starve yourself, as long as you have a high insulin level. And on top of that, with the high insulin, it takes about 10 years of insulin resistance before your blood sugar starts going up, and now you have diabetes. So actually you've been sick, you've been have hyperinsulinemia for about 10 years before you get diabetes type 2. So imagine if we start understanding these things, we can have early detection, how many horrible illnesses so that we can detect. I heard yesterday that diabetes type 2 has increased with 40% the last 4 years in India. So we have a huge pandemic of
Wow.
insulin resistance. Is this what you wanted, or you wanted more details, or no? I think
No,
that
that's
did you
fantastic.
get the point?
It's such a huge problem, and your description of what is happening in the arterial walls was so good. Like when I was on a different diet, I would get angry and frustrated, and sometimes I would punch the wall. And so you need spackle to repair the wall. And if you did that once and repaired it, it's really not that big of a deal. But if I punch the same place in the wall over and
Again and
over and add
again.
more and more and more and more spackle, at some
Yeah,
point it's going to like reach out, it's going to take up more
to
space,
the next
it
wall.
might
Yeah,
break off. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
We blame
yeah,
cholesterol. We blame the
yeah, I know,
cholesterol. It's so
I know.
stupid.
Yeah, I
So
know.
stupid.
Yeah,
Oh, it's
and
crazy.
cholesterol is also, and also your testosterone level go down if you're a man, and estrogen, because cholesterol is very important after it has repaired the damage or made packing in your neurons, which is very important. Otherwise, everything would leak together and be chaos. But then you make the hormones, the male and female hormones, and then it also makes the corticosteroids, which is your antidote for inflammation. So I mean, it's a whole myriad of things that's going to happen if cholesterol's only work will be to go and repair things that is damaged because you eat a lot of carbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. Okay, so I want to go back to the different groups of people. And if you're listening to this and you fall into the category of normies, like you described, like you suck. I can't speak for Bitten, but I can just say from my end, you suck. I'm very jealous of you. I wish I was a normie. I'm definitely not. And so for example, like next weekend, my wife and I are going to take a quick trip down to Las Vegas. We were there a few months ago. I haven't been there in a while, and I was shocked. Like some of these slot machines are massive now, and they have huge screens with lots of colors, and you could tell how they would be like very engulfing. You could get lost in them. It's crazy. I couldn't. They're like really tall and like curved screens and everything, and I can walk by them and I don't get affected. I don't gamble. I've never really enjoyed it. I can just walk right by and it doesn't affect me. Do we know why people fall into those different categories and some people get really addicted to certain things? Or is it like you said, it's not really that important to know why? It's just more important to know which one you are so we know how to deal with it.
Absolutely. The last one is really true. But here's what I learned many, many years ago. You know that, some people are extroverts, some are introverts. It's important to understand we are biochemically unique. I can see by the way you move your body and the way you talk that you're a speed freak. You're either born with a dopamine or acetylcholine dominance in your brain. I have acetylcholine. I'm a speed freak. I talk fast, I walk fast, I boo, boo, boo. I talk before I think. I'm very spontaneous, all that. And then we have the GABA and the serotonin dominant people. They think more like A, B, C. You and I said, oh, yeah, let's do this. Boof. And then we thought, oh, maybe that wasn't so good. But, we are different, and that we should always cherish our personality. We can adapt or improve some of our behaviors, but we should never, ever change your personality. That's dangerous. Then you become sick. So we have those different neurotransmitter dominances that we're born with. Okay. So if you, whenever we look for a drug, in the beginning, we look for a drug that mimics that. So, I loved sugar because that made me speedy. But it's not that simple, Because some people would say, I asked them, which drug did you prefer? Oh, I love bread. Okay, what does bread do for you? I become calm. And I'm like, what? Who would want to take something that makes you calm? I tried cannabis once when I was young and I got sluggish. How fun is that? Boring like crazy. I'm so happy I didn't find cocaine. But this is very important to understand. So that's why one thing is to ask people, what was your favorite drug? And they can tell you, and that tells you something about their biochemistry. And then you can ask them, what did that drug do to you or for you? Well, it made me, like alcohol was speed for me. I mean, if you think about it, alcohol is a sedative, right?
Right.
And some people say, I take a drink to be calm. And I said, no, I took a drink to be speedy. So it isn't that simple to say that, you pick a drug just because of a certain thing. So what we're drawn to and what we react to has to do with this thing, our inherited biochemistry, but that's one factor. The culture you grew up in, what you're exposed to, and the stuff you're exposed to. And I'm like you, if you give me a lottery ticket, I give it back to you. I can't think of anything more boring. I was in Las Vegas once when I lived in US. I was actually rafting in Grand Canyon. So
Wow.
we stayed one night in Las Vegas and went down to look. It was the most horrible place I've ever seen. I saw zombies, and this is so many years ago. It wasn't those big ones that you say, but gambling is absolutely, it is like yucky for me. Whereas chocolate, don't lock me up in a chocolate store. I'm not going to promise what's going to happen. Smell, the sight, there's something, and I can't explain it. And why is it nicotine for some? Why is it cocaine for another? Why is it heroin? We don't know enough about, the neurotransmitter combinations. It's not only about dopamine, remember? We don't really know that, I would state, to know exactly why are you hooked on what you are hooked on and why am I hooked on what I'm hooked on. But one thing we know for sure, sugar is the gateway drug. It starts the horrible process of rebuilding your reward system so that the next thing you try could be even worse or worse. It paves the way. So once you become addicted, you can be addicted to almost anything. But some of us will never be addicted to certain things. I don't think there would ever be any danger for me to be around gamblers because I think it is horrible, disgusting, and boring.
Yeah. Well, that's such a good point. Let's go to the optimistic side of things. You have developed, like we mentioned in the introduction, an amazing assessment tool, a diagnostic tool to determine which kind of category you fall in, and how are we providing optimism and help for people who are who learn that they are like an addict, they're addicted to sugar.
Well, it's very important to understand that the further back you look, the further forward you can go. Actually, that was Churchill saying that. And as a nurse, I don't want to treat guessing. I wouldn't do that with any illness. Well, I guess that you have this illness and let's try this. I think as a nurse, it's important to me to know what's going on, to know if I have the real illness, because I don't work with harmful users. And the important thing to understand the difference is that with harmful use, you can eat certain things maybe in moderation. For an addict, moderation is pure bullshit and dangerous. It's going to make you sicker, right? You have to have total abstinence of the psychoactive substance. So that's why it's so important to know. If you want to be free and get help, what is it? Then the sugar assessment is not only telling you what you are, it is giving an incredible picture of your whole life with the drug, which can, be very painful at first. But so many people, most people cry relieved, and they said, oh God, I have an illness. I'm not a bad person. and they understand and see what this illness have done to them and all the consequences they have. Once you map that out, you have, a plan of things you can do. Okay, let's start here. Let's do this. Look, we need to do this. Otherwise, you're fumbling in the dark. Maybe we should try this. Maybe we should try this. This is going to tell you, okay, here's the road. This is what you need to do to become healthy and live a full life. So that's why it's so important to map that out, to do that assessment.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That reminds me of you going into recovery for alcohol addiction. I'm sure you didn't go hop skipping into alcohol addiction. You probably went kicking and screaming, but
Oh, yes.
you said you were like so grateful for it now because you're on the other side of it. It's different
Right.
than when you start. You can never imagine that you'd be happy going through a recovery program.
No, because my brain was, so depressed because of the alcohol, because it was robbed of all those neurotransmitters. And I thought I was a bad person that couldn't control alcohol. So treatment is actually education. It's knowledge. I always say that knowledge gives hope. Hope gives willingness, and willingness gives action.
Beautiful. Wow, that is beautiful. Is anybody ever too far gone down the path that they cannot recover, or can everybody be helped by this?
No, you can certainly be on the deadly end of this. Definitely. I mean, it has gone so far. There's so much damage all over. We know that Alzheimer's is diabetes type 3, due to the insulin resistance. We don't know how to reverse that. There are no methods today. You can have such bad kidney illness that you have to, go on dialysis machine, and your time is measured. Your diabetes might have made you blind, or, losing a limb or something. So you could be in the very, very last stage, the chronic last stage. There's always something we could do to make life better for you. But, it could be too late to restore to full health. Absolutely. This is a very, very deadly illness. This is not something, I eat too much sugar. This is
Yeah,
the real thing.
very, very serious.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, I think about somebody like my grandma. She's in her late 80s now. And I remember talking to her about like, candy in particular, sugar, but especially candy. She, like, you could see it in her eyes. She looked like a crack addict. If you
Yeah,
mentioned candy to her, she didn't grow up with it. Like weren't around all this stuff. Now it's here. And when she talks about candy, she looks like a drug addict. And she decided in her 80s, either diabetic or pre-diabetic, I can't remember which, that she was just going to stop buying candy and stop bringing it in the house. She lost tons of weight and she feels amazing. And now she can go out on walks and her knees don't hurt anymore. And she was able to
I
make
love
some
it.
progress just by
Yes.
not buying it. It was
Yeah,
really amazing. So I think of that, like, yeah, you may have caused some damage and you might not be able to turn around some of the damage, but you can always do something to at least improve things.
absolutely. You can't go back to full health, maybe. But another thing is that we work with your spiritual and your mental parts in the way that you enjoy life, even if you have some slight damages. I mean, we all get some damage. I used to say to people, my God, you don't think I could eat sugar for 40 years, drink for 13 years, and eat sugar for 20 years and have no damage? Of course I have some damage, but I know how to stay healthy today, and that means living with the quirks you have. Everybody has some things, so that's it. But it doesn't bother me. You see what I mean? I
Yeah,
I accept it, and I know how to live with it,
yeah, yeah. That's
and I
such a
create
difference.
as much health as I can every day.
Mm. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I look at their lives, my grandparents, and they love each other. They laugh hysterically every single day. They create memories even to this day. They just installed a hammock at their house. I'm sure they're going to fall out of it several times, but they're making a
That
happy
sounds
life because
wonderful.
yeah,
That sounds wonderful. Yeah.
they're the best model of health I could ever describe. And they're not on any
Yes.
particular diet. They eat pizza every Tuesday and Friday, but they just love and they have experiences. And again, with
Yes.
grandma, she just stopped
Yes.
buying candy. Such a
Yeah.
wonderful example. How
Yeah.
does
And maybe
somebody
she had
start?
just had harmful use. Maybe she wasn't addicted.
Yeah, right. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe that's an
Yeah.
interesting thought. I hadn't thought about that. How does somebody get started? Where can people go to like kind of find your programs and what can they expect?
Well, they can go to Facebook and join the Sugar Bomb in Your Brain group, which is a closed group for anyone that, want to hang out with other people, because I think it's very important that we are with like-minded people. So we don't go to one of those normies that's going to say, oh, it's just to eat carrots and run every day. Hoo-hoo.
Moderate.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to work on an addict. That understand that. They could go in my website. If you go on my website, you're going to find one that says sugar specialist. And there you have a lot of people that have trained, in this diagnosis method and in the method how to work with people, the treatments and blah, blah, blah. Everything, from just starting to get some knowledge to go into some kind of treatment group. So you have all those people there. And, I think it's very important that you get knowledge. I think that is the number one thing. And most of all, if you think that this is your problem, get rid of the shame and the stigma. This is a biochemical problem in your brain. You didn't cause it. You have to really give yourself that mantra. I did not cause this. This is caused by the processed food out there. And you had no idea that you would be hooked when you started tasting some of that way back. How in the whole world would you know that? So you have to get rid of the shame, because the stigma and the shame are going to keep you isolated and keep you sick. So one of the things is how bad even in knowledge, community, groups, support, keep doing that.
Yeah.
That's the most
No,
important thing.
that's wonderful. That to me reminds me of the difference between fault and responsibility. It's not your fault. It really is not your fault. You got hooked on something that is so delicious. It made you light up as a 1-year-old when you got your cake.
Yeah.
It's not your
Yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
It is what it is. But now it is your
Yes.
responsibility and you need to do
Yeah.
something about it. And I love that you talk about not only the knowledge, but also the support. And it occurs to me that having groups, communicating with other people, the community that you mentioned would be so, so important for people to actually recover and really heal themselves.
Yeah, and also there you find people that, when I worked, I've done so many 4-day intensives lives since 1996. So I've been treating thousands of clients. And one thing that is shocking to me when they come to these groups, after the first time we sit in group and share, why are you here? Why are you here? And they listen to others and said, I thought I was the only one doing stuff like that. I thought I was the only one. And the thing they say when they come is, well, I'm here because I have a problem with food. And then they laugh a little nervously, most of them, and say, well, I have lots of problems, but I'm here for the food. And then after 4 days, I said, okay, so what did make most impact on you? And they say, you know what? I have one problem with many consequences. I can work on the problem.
Yeah.
Now they see the light. Oh, shoot, this is because of the addiction, and this is because of the addiction, and this and that, and so forth. I have one problem, my addiction, with lots of consequences, but I can work on the problem. They worked
Yeah.
on the wrong end before. They worked on the consequences, but never on the addiction.
Such an important point. I love that.
Yep.
And for
Yeah.
every like first time consultation I've ever done with anybody who's tried the diet that you mentioned earlier, they tried the exercise, it didn't work. They all think that they're broken. And it's like 100% of the people I meet all think that they're broken. Well, you guys all have the same issue. You're following the wrong advice. Let's get you the right advice. You have a community. Like we're all in the same boat here. It's
Well,
wonderful.
that is a very, very, I'm glad you brought that up, broken, because that is the propaganda, the cannabis, people that want cannabis free, or the opioid, the Sacklers, OxyContin, the pills, and the same with the food industry. Our product is so safe. It's only if you're broken, you get addicted. Bullshit.
Bullshit.
Yeah. And I used to say, never, ever underestimate those chemicals' power on our brain. They're major, make us hooked.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
So our brain is primitive. It's still, 50,000 years ago that was developed. It hasn't changed a lot since. and we didn't have those dangerous things. So anyone can, that have the slightest genetic sensitivity, a micro piece, can be addicted. So don't trust that. You're not broken. You're not crazy. You're not psychiatric ill. It's a biochemical problem.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. So my mom passed away of cancer, breast cancer, in 2006. And so it was around the 2000s that she was getting the radiation, the chemotherapy. We switched to a low-fat diet. We had lots of sugar. I would bring her giant apple cider drinks as in the hospital as she was getting treatments. And they told her she was on the strongest Oxycontin that they could prescribe at the time. I think it was an Oxy 70. And they just said, like, if you're in real bad pain, just take the pill and chew it so it will quick release. Are you kidding me? Terrible. Anyway, you said that you are a very fast person. I believe you're 70. Is that right? 70, 71?
Yeah, 70.
You show no signs. You show no signs of slowing down at all. You look totally vibrant and healthy. You talk fast, which I love, by the way.
Yeah, I love that too by you. I love that.
It's so fun. So you said you had a busy semester and that's over now, and you've got a little bit of a break, and you're going to kind of take it easy and enjoy the outdoors in Sweden. What else do you have coming up in the future?
Well, my passion is to train professionals to do this diagnostic tool, the sugar tool. Anyone can go to my website and apply to do that. So that's one thing I do. And you can hop on that anytime, if you're a professional. And then I have a 1-year online training called Holistic Addiction Medicine with, metabolic dysfunction training in it. And I do some other, training like at Nutrition Network, Tim Noakes Foundation. I do some training of professionals there too. And, a little bit here and there, and then translating my book. But, basically my aim now is I no longer take clients. I've done enough. I'm done. But I love to train the next generation professionals that's going to go out there and do the job. Because I was alone so many years before, people joined me and trained. So that's what I love. That's my passion, to train people, teach.
I love it.
Train.
Yeah. I love it. I love the idea of like retirement. Is such a new idea. Like if you found your passion and found what you love, there's no plans on kind of slowing down. It's about sharing and growing all for the rest of your life. It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm going to go out and trim the garden now and water and, plant flowers and all that. That's my passion in the summer.
Beautiful.
I take time to do these things and I have one dog and her sister is here. So I have 2 dogs tonight. So we're going to go for a walk again.
Beautiful. Well, we will turn you loose to go take a wonderful walk in Sweden. That sounds amazing. This has been such a wonderful conversation, something I've been looking forward to a very long time. Where can people go to find you and connect with you and your work? Okay, they can go to my website, bittensaddiction.com. BITTENS addiction, one word. Bitten S addiction, it's one word. Bittensaddiction.com. Okay. And there you can email me, you can subscribe to my newsletter. I don't do really lots of social media at this point because, translating my book too. So I'm busy with that. Now going to be summer vacation. I'm going to go out and play. But, they can, and I promise to always answer. I answer everyone that emails me, even if it can take a couple of weeks sometimes, but I will answer. Wow. And join the Sugar Bomb group on Facebook. Sugar Bomb group, and you said that was Facebook. Yeah, okay. Yes. That's so generous of you to respond to all the emails. If I would have known that, I would have emailed you much earlier to be on the show. Like I said, you're somebody I followed for a very long time. Our mutual friend, Fenley McLaren, introduced us from the Chatting Fit podcast. You're one of my great friends. And so I'm so grateful for him. I'm just so grateful for you and all of your work and everything that you are doing to get this message out and to work with people individually for so long and to now have the bigger vision to train the next generation, I think is wonderful. Bitten, thank you so very much on this beautiful day. Thank you so much. And it's people like you and Finley that's going to take this, and take it further into the future, and I can sit and smell my roses. Perfect. That sounds great. We're going to do our best to move that message forward because it is so important and so many people are suffering. Bitten, thank you so very much for taking the time to be on our show today. And thank you for all of your work. We really, really appreciate you. Thank you and take care and have a good time. You too. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.